Hello and welcome to episode 7 of my podcast, HassanSpeaks. Today we have a very interesting topic about artists and artistry and artificial intelligence, a blend of technology and human ingenuity. We will be discussing several areas in this topic. We'll be discussing about the influence of technology and AI on contemporary art. We'll be also discussing the irreplaceable elements of human ingenuity that AI cannot replicate, and the competitive advantages of both artists and AI in different creative processes, and future of art as a collaborative effort between technology and human creativity. We'll also dwell down into the role of art in wellness and the importance of maintaining artistic authenticity in a tech-driven world. And in order to discuss all these points, we have a very special guest among us today, Ibrahim Gailani, who is... First of all, welcome, Ibrahim.
It's a pleasure to be here,
Let me take
Hassan.
a little bit of liberty to introduce you, and then I perhaps will only do a fraction of justice with that. But we are thrilled to have you today. You've been a truly inspiring personality as well. He's a self-taught contemporary artist. He has also carved out a unique path in the art world through his journey of self-discovery and a passion for creativity, and a lot more. His work, which blends pop artist aesthetics with bold graffiti elements, as well reflects his distinctive artistic approach and vision and the commitment to innovation in the field. His story and art are not just visually captivating, but also deeply inspiring, and we'll soon hear a lot more from you. And it offers a powerful reminder also of the beauty that emerges when we follow our true passions. Ibrahim.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I should be grateful. I'm sitting with the real celebrity here of
You're
the
very
podcast
generous and kind.
Yes, art, I think, is really the soul of culture, of society. Art has been there from the times of, the caveman, really. When you could scribble onto caves, you drew something, you drew art. So art has always been an expression of strife, or struggle, of discovery. And I think that is what always makes art so important and relevant in every decade.
And also very unique.
Also very unique, and also it is a note on the pulse of culture and society of that time. So the art of the 70s reflected what they were going through. The art of the 90s reflected what they were going through. Art of the early 2000s, what they were going through. And art today, especially with AI, is what reflective of the times that we are going through.
It's interesting you say that, but before we dwell down into the field's relationship with AI, and perhaps how you're approaching it, let's dwell down to who Ibrahim is.
Right? How much time do you have?
we can perhaps have an entire season on that.
Yeah.
But just to just scratch the surface. I mean, if you could share a little bit about your background, what inspired you to pursue this field, and particularly also within the space of graffiti?
Yes. Well, so graffiti is a very important part that I discovered, and I'll tell you where I discovered that. But before that, I am a product of mixed cultural parentage who grew up in Dubai. So I moved from Baghdad, Iraq to Dubai at the age of 5.
Wow.
And my parents are Iraqi and Afghani father and Pakistani mother. And I moved here in 1979 in Dubai, and I grew up here. And then I have lived in the GCC for most of my life, and recently in Oman for quite a few years. And then I've come back here. So while here, I think I think this is something that you get. There's a creative child inside everybody, and I think I was just lucky enough that I was able to express it. So my earliest memory, even when I was here going to school in Dubai, UAE, is that I could draw, I could paint before I could even write. This is my earliest memory.
Wow.
So I would...
Very few could say that.
Yes, I mean, I remember that I would scribble and paint even before I could do anything else. So it almost defined me as a person, creative expression. And then as life developed, I went into the, having very traditional parents and the traditional setup, or the traditional world usually tells to most creative people, find a proper job or find a regular career, find something
Correct.
stable. Being a parent myself now, I would say the same to my children.
The world is round, nothing changes.
Yeah, I would say the same to my children. It is a difficult part to go. So I did a business degree, and then I worked in the corporate world for many, many years. I worked in Dubai. I worked in call centers, managed call centers. I became a consultant. But the art was always my calling. So while in Oman, I decided to start art all over again after many, many years, maybe 20 years. And one of the things that I did was I was part of an art symposium and an art Athens Art Festival in Greece, and I went there. And at that point in time, the whole of Greece had all these graffitis on the wall in Athens, and it was protest graffitis or thought graffitis on the walls. And I got really inspired by that. And it was the height of the refugee crisis, which people were landing up in Greece shores, and there was writings on the walls. And I thought that's a great expression of thoughts. And so I always made faces and portraits. To me, a face relates a story of a journey of self-discovery, because I always say that your story is written on your face. Who you are is written on your face. We just don't pause to see the other person. And so along with that, I said, how about if I write the thoughts or the voices that we hear or the things that we see on the background of these faces, or incorporated in the painting. So I started to do writing and graffiti writings all over my art. And that just transformed my art, and people loved it. And it became part of my signature style. And it just, it's something which I got awarded for. I won an art award in New York City for that.
Wow, wonderful. Congratulations for
Thank you so much. And so my art got exhibited in Miami, in LA, in Vancouver, and I also won the Best Artist Award in Art Vancouver, and that was for this, because I kept painting about people's journey and their thoughts and what they're listening from the world. And I think people want to relate to it. When they see a painting, I think everybody wants to see, what can I see in it? And because my paintings are somehow literal, because you can read it, I think it engages people a lot more. And that's why I guess it has been popular.
It's a very niche space, and I think very much had been inbuilt in you from childhood, because what I understand from our conversation so far is that you did not have any professional education into art.
No, I did not have any, except for, the art class at O-level and A-level high school, which is the basic,
yeah.
You go to the art class and
Correct.
you paint something. Apart from high school art classes, I had no formal.
What kind of challenges you faced? Let's say when you go to the gallery, you said you exhibited your work in US and Canada and perhaps other countries as well. But when it comes to exhibiting your work, right? Any challenges you face regarding not having a professional background at it?
I think initially, yes. When I started out, I think for any aspiring artist to get those breaks are very difficult, especially if you're not a known name when you start out. And when I did start out, and this is, of course, when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth, not to give away my age, but when I did start out,
I'd give you 25. It's okay.
When I did start out earlier, doors were shut, and I knew a famous gallery curator, and she told me that, you know what, you will never be an artist in this town. And I looked at her and I just said, okay, watch me. Because at that point in time, you have to have only self-belief. And I think this is so true for so many people who are creative or non-creative or in a field and they're struggling. You have to have self-belief that you can do it. And you have to constantly tell yourself that I can do it. And once you are able to say that to yourself and really believe it, it will happen, inshallah,
Inshallah, no, I'm sure there are many more achievements ahead. Given your international experience as well and within the field, right? What has been your experience working perhaps in the region over here, in tandem, or let's say versus internationally? And how do these experiences shape your current artistic approach and vision?
I think internationally there is a lot of art which is consumed. All sorts of art. So there's a huge market for sales and purchase. So the commercial aspect of art is really high. And for example, in the US, 40%.
It's a larger market.
Yeah, 40% of all art.
So basic
sold.
economics.
So the economy is higher. Hence, a lot of artists can get really great breaks there. In the Middle East, everybody is chasing the same collectors, so as to speak.
Yeah.
So it's difficult, more difficult here to make it as an artist. And that's why it's more important to have a more unique view. Because you can't be like everybody else.
You really have to differentiate yourself.
You have to differentiate yourself to be different, so that a collector can say, "Oh, okay, so this is a unique piece, and I want to have this."
Right.
Or they like people, like to get to know people. So it's always about the art, but it's also about the artist who makes it. And I think people get inspired by the artist as well, and they get inspired by their story and their technique. And so you have to also market yourself. And I think that is very important. Today, artists have to be entrepreneurs who market themselves on social media, who can edit reels and can do podcasts like this.
Like they say, you need to have a very large team of one man.
A large team of one person that does everything. And a lot of times, unfortunately, artists are very shy. They're introverted. They sit in their studio. They're by themselves. So they can't just go and put themselves out there. And so a lot of artists are hesitant to even exhibit their work.
Right.
They're hesitant to show it to even friends and family. And here we are expecting artists to showcase on, to make reels and TikToks and put it on social media. And it's something that most artists struggle with.
It's a good point you bring about introverts. This is somewhere where I read somewhere where introverts, most of the thinkers in the world are introverts.
Exactly.
And most of the doers in the world. So there are two types of people, right? So doers and thinkers. And most of the thinkers are introverts. Most of the doers are extroverts. Given that this industry is very creative, it requires a lot of thinking.
Absolutely.
So I would assume a lot of artists are introverts.
Majority of the artists.
So it makes it a lot more difficult, like you were saying, for them to put themselves out in the market and tell, this is who I am, this is my work, and this is unique.
Yes. So, and I think this is why, for example, I have an extroverted personality, but I'm a Libra, so I think I balance between both the scales of introvert and extrovert. But also because I think that's the one advantage I have, because I'll go and I won't be shy in talking to people, putting myself out there. But I think this is the most important thing about artists, is to give them that nurturing space so that they can actually flourish, they can actually exhibit, they can actually talk about their art. So, forums
like a launch pad.
A launch pad. And I think that is something which I know there are a lot of initiatives right now currently in the region that's happening, but a lot more is required, where you give like these sort of safe spaces for artists and artist grants for artists to really showcase their work.
The field is very competitive, especially as you mentioned in the region. But your work is very unique. You're blending in graffiti with artistry. What do you intend, or let's say, what do you see so far in your work that you have impacted the art scene in the region? In what ways have you done that?
Well, I would love to say that I've impacted. I don't know if I have, to be honest, because you hope that your art makes a difference. Every artist would want their art to make a difference. But I think what I have been able to bring the focus back on, there was a notion that faces or figures are not welcome in the Middle East. That, more sort of traditional art or sort of calligraphy and sort of more abstract work is more welcome because people don't like to see images, from their cultural beliefs. But in my opinion, the focus that I have been able to do is that I curated a show which was called Just the Faces, the portrait show. It was only faces of different artists, different interpretation of how they would put faces to it. And because I constantly paint faces about people and bringing graffiti in. So I think removing that hesitation that, and now I see most of my collectors are from the region. They're locals, they're Arabs, they're people who you would traditionally don't think would buy faces of huge portraits to put in their room, and they do. So I think in that way, I may have moved the needle slightly on putting images of forms of faces and human forms into some living rooms and art spaces and offices.
And it's pretty evident also by your on social media. I see a lot of posts around your work. So certainly there's a lot of momentum. Great. This all is now based on human ingenuity.
Yes.
Now let's talk about how this impacts or is impacted by the technology. So we've recently seen, especially post ChatGPT,
yes.
right, where AI was accessible and became accessible for a lot of people at society level. So with the rise of AI in so many creative fields, how do you see the impact of technology on artistry in the world today?
I think that's a great question, especially because, as they say, AI is going to take over everybody's jobs and everybody's going to be redundant. So there's this huge hype about it. And anything when that gets launched, there's a huge hype. You had the hype about crypto. You had the hype about NFT. Everybody was making these digital doodles of drawings, and they would just sell them for really high amounts. So whenever something new comes in, there is a hype. But once the hype dies down, you see what is the utility of it. There is a great deal of merger of creativity with AI. I would have to agree. So I think when worked in sort of a collaborative space, AI and artists can work together in a very positive way. So there is a happy medium of where both the worlds can come together. The question is AI going to replace artists? I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it because at a certain point in time, AI works with things where algorithms have been fed into it, and there's referential learning that it then develops and becomes. So where does that referential learning come from? There has to be a human input. And after a certain point in time, most AI, as they develop creatively, today you can tell an AI-generated image on Instagram very easily.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because they all look very similar.
But if you see over the past few years, especially in the past 3 years, it has come a long way.
It has come a long way. But you can tell that it is AI-generated because it is super polished, and beauty lies in imperfections. And
I was waiting for that, yeah.
And I think the human touch, and that's why, there's a perfectly made piece of furniture that is made by a machine, but you would always go to an artisan who does something with hand.
And it's more valuable.
That is more valuable. So anything that is done by hand and by labor, I don't think that would ever be replaced.
So do you, in your current work, do you incorporate AI or take help of AI in order to produce your work?
Well, I do work on digital mediums. I do go on digital mediums, and I do take that help. So I think where there's a collaborative effort where you would say, okay, you go into, you'd want to create a scenario to aid your imagination. What would this look like? And maybe AI gives you an image. And then you take that image and you make an interpretation of that, but you do it with your painted by hand. So you are taking it as a reference, but you're not recreating the exact same thing. And that different uniqueness is really what makes the human element different. And that's the collaborative aspect of AI. AI can help you. It's like, when your kids want to do the homework through ChatGPT, they can read it, but they'll have to write it in their own words. Otherwise, the teachers will know that it's a straight copy.
Absolutely.
So
And it's pretty evident sometimes because, like you said, beauty lies in imperfections, and that's what differentiates as well, one from the other.
And especially you had these in Art Basel, Miami, you had these robots that had started to doing painting, and there was this robot that was just doing this repetitive art. That's great, but it was that one piece of art that the robot kept doing, and it's an art installation. And the robots can create art, great, but they can create these perfect pieces. But if you instantly told them to change that, it would require a lot more programming, a lot more input. So you can't replace the human brain, unfortunately.
It's like, everyone in the art world talks about Mona Lisa's smile, right? If that smile was perfect, it wouldn't have been the art piece it is today.
Absolutely. And so there's an element of mystery. AI doesn't have mystery. It is very specifically states whatever it wants to. If you want to see, I recently saw a picture of Brad Pitt running in a kurta shalwar, or celebrating Diwali or something. It was an AI generated image. It was perfect. And I said, a real picture would never look this perfect, And so it is really those imperfections, and you have to have that mystery to go into it. So I think it's a great tool. I think collaboratively AI and artists can work, and I think they will work a lot together. But in terms of fine art, I think the artist and the human touch will always have a slight more advantage.
How about the emotional and experiential aspects of art in relation to the AI? We all know AI, perhaps. That's what the understanding is today, that it works on logic, not on emotions.
Yes.
And art is more about touching the emotions.
Yeah, it is about emotions.
So how is that, what would you comment on? What would be your observation on these aspects and emotional, experiential aspects of art, and how a human can fulfill that, perhaps, or embed it into his creation rather than AI, or vice versa?
I think your point is so valid that when you are looking at AI, when an artist is painting with all their passion and they're taking the paint and they're splashing it and they're taking out, their trauma or whatever they want. And so those strokes are going to be brilliant. They ask an artist to recreate a painting. This exact same painting, he can never do it. I can never do it because there's so much of our emotions go into it. Now you switch that to an AI, ask them to make the painting. They could make the same image, but it would lack that passion. It would lack those splashes of colors, and you would not feel it. You would not feel that. You would not resonate to it. This is my opinion, of course.
In addition to that, also there's an aspect of personal story, like you were mentioning in the beginning of this show, of this episode, is that there's a background you're coming from. That's what led you to be here. And now that's how it is represented in your work, perhaps, right? So there's an influence of personal story, which technology perhaps has not reached to a position to replicate that and put it into that work. They could create the work, put the right algorithms and input. But what it may not be able to do is to replicate now your emotions and your personal story into your type of work.
Exactly. Unless and it could be that they could in future put in the life experience of Frida Kahlo, of Picasso, of Dali into, put their life story and create a program that would say, okay, what would it be if these famous artists were all put into one sort of an AI program and then art was created? But would they get, how much pain did Frida Kahlo feel when she painted? What sort of absolute passion Picasso had when he did it? Or, the ingenious of Dali when he created the melting time, and all of those things, where the eccentricity of, our pop art icons, did they do it? How they replicate that? So that feeling, that emotion, which made them who they are, would never be. Their life story could, their experiences could, but their emotions could never be replicated by AI.
I think that's what makes the human work more unique. Now, having said that, this is all about, we're saying, these are where humans are better at, or more creative at, or great at, comparatively to a technological alternative. But what are, perhaps in your opinion, what are some of the competitive advantages perhaps AI has in this field that can also be utilized perhaps even by human artists, right?
I really do think that there is, when I say collaborative, there is such an important aspect of it. And the most important part is time, the response time, to create. So a lot of time, for example, you can think of the concept. How do you visualize it? So maybe what AI can do is have 20 options instantly ready, and you can pull from those options. It reduces your time. A lot of time also does take in the form of the minute details of like backgrounds and this of a painting. What should this be? The color schemes. How should I choose it? Choosing the AI could do that instantly, and so many options to have those ready, and then you can just select. So it can reduce times. You could have a program where you say, okay, draw me the outlines of the Manhattan skyline. AI could draw the outline. You take that outline, and then you start to paint it by yourself. You fill it up, and you create it. So there can be this collaborative, which, the sketching and the outline are things which is very tedious for artists and time consuming for artists to do. AI could get all the proportions. For example, I could say, make so-and-so face outline. For me, what my time as a portrait artist goes is the nose in proportion to the eyes, is the chin in proportion there. AI could do all those mathematical and have a fully formed face blank ready for me to start my creative paint process. So it could actually reduce maybe 3 days of my creative journey.
And that's a very important, I think it's a very important point, that AI is there to augment human capacities and capabilities rather than replace them. I think this is what one needs to understand, that the correct use of it would be to augment capacity of
I think
person.
Artists can benefit from AI by using it to their advantage, especially in their creative process, in their creative journey. And you could have a blend of digital and paint work, which some people already do. And I think that will be so important going forward. And once that is done, because also scalability, once you've got the right work done, you can scale your art. It can be available in so many different forms, mediums around the world. You don't have to physically move your art so many places.
And I think that's a perfect. Also, I think it's a perfect blend and example of the collaboration between technology and human creativity. Having talked about collaboration so much, how do you see the future of collaboration between AI and artists or artistry?
I think definitely exactly where it is merging of the two, where a lot of it goes in hand, where the a part of the artwork is done by AI and a part of it is done by human, and then to reduce the timeline of the concepts. I think outlines and concepts and all of these things which are, when you have to really brainstorm, AI can give those visuals very quickly, and there you can pull those out. I think is a very effective way of going forward, of having options. That's what AI can do really effectively for the creative artist, whoever wishes to choose it.
It also dwells down to in a conversation I was having some time ago with someone as well, who was in a creative field, but in a different creative field, where they mentioned how AI is also able to sometimes trigger your blind spots. So sometimes you may be not thinking about something,
Absolutely.
right? But it's applicable. I could bring it in front of you and say, this exists as well. Maybe you want to consider this.
Absolutely.
And I think when an artist is working or trying to put his work into on canvas, I think that element is very important as well. A lot of times you're too focused on certain elements that you narrow your thinking horizon, and then you miss out on a lot of things. Regardless, it makes the art piece still unique, but it could give better perspectives as well to incorporate.
I think that's very important, a great point. And this is where I was alluding to earlier, where you have different options. And those options can do is when it gives you things like, have you looked at it this way? Have you looked at it that way? So it gives you a different perspective of
Right.
your own art piece.
Like a probing question.
Yes, or probing images, take your image and transform it in this way, and they're like, I never looked at it in this way,
Right.
And so that is almost like if you would call in the olden days an art teacher to your studio and say, can you have a look? Do you think I missed out on something? Or a senior artist would come and say, have you looked at it this way? Have you looked at it that way? Here you could have AI as your guide.
Yeah, an unbiased, viewpoint.
Non-emotional.
It's like an editor is to writer.
Absolutely. Right? And I think that would be a great collaborative space where AI could work with artists.
Wonderful. So there's a very interesting thing about you, I think, and you mentioned this to me in the past as well, where you say you run or have run art and wellness retreats.
Yes.
So tell us more about this.
Well, this is something that I've been doing for the last 10 years, and it is art wellness retreats. So almost therapeutic retreats where creative and non-creative people from all walks of life who are maybe not professional artists, so doctors and lawyers and nurses and teachers who come, and I give them a visualization story of a topic for the day, which is like letting go or finding your next chapter. And I make them sit in a circle, we meditate, we close our eyes, and I let them think of an image that comes into their head. And then I curate the music for the day, and they paint to music, sort of more abstract and just unconventional ways by putting paint on their fingers. They touch the canvas. It is almost like a spa-like experience of art. It's therapeutic, but it's not art therapy, which is clinical, but it is
it's more like counseling, perhaps.
It is more self-expression and just letting go. And, a lot of even artists find it very difficult because in this workshop, I asked you to just not hold any barriers and to be free. And people who've gone to traditional art schools are they have the art teacher in their head telling them not to do this or not to do that. And so letting go is very difficult for them. So sometimes artists find it very difficult in my art retreats, but it is basically a journey of finding what your emotions are through color and painting to music on topics which inspire you, or it could be difficult. So it could be about pain, it could be about forgiveness. And when I do that, at the end of that 8-hour day, we sit in a circle again, and one by one, each artist or participant talks about their journey and they show their art, and then the audience tells them what they see in it. Because they are usually abstract, so there isn't a defined form.
And everyone will have their own interpretations.
And the artist and they say, sometimes they're like, oh, maybe I didn't see it. Yeah. And they say, I see a bird flying, so maybe you want to travel, or I see somebody cutting a rope, and it would trigger a thought. Yeah. And I have had over 1,000 people have attended this over the past 10 years. And it has been one of my greatest passion and privileges to run this.
If the way I see it, would you say it is closely related to the wellness and well-being
Absolutely.
area?
It is totally about wellness and art. And we were doing these retreats here at the H Hotel as well for a period of time. And we've breaked for the summer, and then we'll start again. But it is really, I think it totally removes so much stress. It's like a catharsis, and we all want to do creative work.
Right.
So, and the testament of his success is that I've been able to do it for 10 years, nonstop.
So how do you think the intersection of wellness, art, and creativity and technology, how do they interconnect?
I think that space is quite relevant, because I think we are so wired up today, and everything is in such 15-second intervals and 7-second intervals that we are so tired up. A retreat in art needs you to slow down. Creative process wants you to slow down. It cannot be rushed. And so by definition of going into something creative, you have to slow down. You have to disconnect. And when you slow down and you disconnect, you reflect. And reflection becomes therapeutic. And then it becomes wellness. And through AI, you could really incorporate that by when you could in the future have this artificial intelligence headsets that you could wear. And as we talk, there could be these visuals that help you aid. Because right now you visualize in your imagination.
Yeah.
They could really look at that imagination and have a creative painting scenario in your head right there. And then you go into your retreat and then you create a painting based on that.
And even in the, so today we have, for example, a lot of YouTube clips that are hour, 2 hours, 6 hours long,
Yes.
that are very therapeutic in nature in terms of if you just
Put
search,
them on.
a video or a music for studies
Yes,
or for
yes.
rest,
Yes.
and you'll see a lot of them. And I think also where would you be of the opinion perhaps or comment on how AI can not only aid in that way, which is a direct aid, but also perhaps curate the entire process
Absolutely.
in a manner that is very much, let's say, retainable by the participants.
I think so. You could, look at, right now we have one sort of general music for everybody. But in future, you could have headsets given to everybody and they could be in their zone and curated to their personality.
Very personalized approach on them, yeah.
A very personalized sound and music that they have while they're doing the painting. So it's a huge topic that can be developed.
What advice would you give to today's artists who are navigating this landscape in an era? I mean, you and I are from the previous generation, perhaps.
Yeah.
But let's say the new generation who are embarking or have this creative edge, and they are trying to navigate the landscape of technology and art together. What would be your advice on how to maintain their unique creative voice while also optimizing and augmenting their capacities?
Yeah, I think one of the key things is it's good to look at new trends, but don't just jump on a trend unless you're fully sold onto it, because it will come across as unauthentic. So figure out your unique creative voice and develop a unique creative style would be my first advice, because you don't want to be the trending, if everybody's doing, for example, the beach, everybody's painting the beach. That's the latest trend. You do that as well. Find out what is your creative voice, your creative style. Find out, discover a style which is unique to yours would be my first advice.
So be authentic.
Be authentic, a unique voice. Second advice would be get tech savvy. Use AI to your advantage in helping you work on a collaborative space of giving you options. If you want to create something, how would you use AI to your advantage? 3 is get digital. You have all these, you have Canva, you have Procreate, you have all these softwares that can help you create digitally. So create traditionally and digitally. That would be my third advice. And my fourth advice would be learn how to market yourself, because today is all about being in front of viewers. So all of that works with the first point, which is find your own authentic style.
Those are wonderful advices, and I'm sure they're invaluable to many out there listening to you at the moment. We discussed Ibrahim Gailani as a person. We discussed what he does. We discussed how he incorporates modern techniques as well, and then the incorporation of technology. And then we also spoke about the industry as a whole and the impact of AI on it and vice versa. And we also bifurcated the impact of human on AI and AI on human and how to augment those capacities. Final question now. What legacy do you hope to build that the future generations are able to resonate with? What do you hope to leave behind, in
Wow.
terms of whether it is tech related or not? But we do know the world is changing rapidly. So what do you intend to create and leave behind?
I think that's quite a loaded question. I think for everybody, legacy is very important. And I think if you're privileged enough to be in this field of creativity, I think if you can leave behind a vision where people saw that, and in 2 or 3 generations or 4 generations was still inspired by your point of view, that would be a job well done. Because today, how many years has it been since 1955 when Frida was there, or when Andy Warhol in the 60s was at his peak of his career, or Picasso, or Diego. All of these artists have long gone, but we still see, or Michelangelo, we still see a Michelangelo, we see Gustav Klimt, we see all of these great, great artists. And you see that and you're still amazed by the thoughts that they had, the vision that they had, and you still get inspired. If I can, after I am gone from this earth, my art is in somebody's home and they see that and they can still be inspired to create, to find out more, and to answer an unanswered question, then that would be a legacy that I would be very happy with.
That's a wonderful thought, and a very deep one as well. So thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Where can the viewers or the listeners reach you?
Well, my Instagram handle is Gailani Art, and I have my website of the same name. And I am, if you Google my name, you will see my phone number. You will see how to get in touch. I'm most accessible.
That's Gailani,
GAILANI.ART.
Wonderful. You all know where to reach him now. And please do connect those who are aspiring artists and would love to understand more, even in this intersection of technology and art. Ibrahim Gailani, thank you very much for being on the show. Appreciate your presence and had a wonderful conversation with you.
Hassan, it's been a pleasure. And thank you for having this platform, for giving creative artists a voice.
My pleasure always. Thank you.